Hey, welcome back, everybody. Time once again to grab your gear, follow along as we wander along with our wayfarer, the one man wandering the county in search of what's cool, innovative, and interesting. We're living the RAAD life right here today, and he's back.
He is living the RAAD life.
Oh my God, we're living the RAAD life
Look
today.
who's talking. Should I pull up the video and have Paul run it of a certain chef that will never be mentioned by name, that basically took it upon himself to, along the way, to auction off his hat, which said "We Chef" on it.
That's right.
At the recent Table for 10 that took place at the Renaissance in Newport Beach last week.
I'm ready to take it.
Sunday, right? What he you know how people like say he gave me the shirt off his back.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Pascal, and I don't know if it's a French way of fundraising or what exactly, but he decided to strip down to his waist.
What?
To the applause of the audience as he built interest in selling the hat.
Wow. What did they get for the hat?
And just to put things in perspective, the man is very courageous as he's approaching his 70th birthday.
He passed
to
that
basically
one. He passed
do
that.
Yes. To basically do that. Yes. So I will.
And what was the fundraiser for? I forgot. No, this is for your
for my foundation of scholarship for culinary scholarship.
A culinary scholarship. So would this be at what, like Saddleback or
Saddleback College for now?
Because you're teaching there. Okay.
And shout out to all the chefs that participated too. He had a lot of people that participated.
Yeah.
Lido House, Park Club, or these. And
know,
we had Kevin from Cannery was our chef, right at the table.
And we got to put some show on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize it was dinner and a show. I mean, I was there for the food, but then all of a sudden I got the food for thought. The thing is that since Sunday I haven't been able to get that image out of my head.
How many hats was he selling?
Well, let's put it this way. By the time he was done with the striptease, it's a good thing we sold one hat.
Did he sell his underwear or anything else?
No. There was it was a family channel.
Did the price of the hat go up as the clothes
Yeah.
came up?
Oh,
yeah.
Or did it go in the other direction?
It went down.
Did somebody at the end say, pay this much?
It was like
if you put the
$1,000
clothes
hat,
back
wasn't
on?
it? It was $1,000 hat.
Yeah.
He sold that hat off for $1,000.
I have several hats in my pocket.
And I'm trying to find
I'm just trying to make fun of it because I'm jealous that he was able to sell his hat for $1,000.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe it's new next.
I can't.
Well,
You gonna sell me for $1,000?
Watch this for a segue. Watch this for a
It's a
segue.
good
He's a leader in the culinary arts community, just as your guest talks about leadership today here.
I think that's Paul's Paul's attempt to bring us back on track so we can actually.
No, I totally.
we're down a rabbit hole. Of,
20 minutes after the hat, right?
We're down a rabbit hole of
Paul,
chefs.
thank you for the linking.
Yes.
And because this is where I'm going to talk with Dr. J.
So introduce your guest.
I think I should leave. I mean, at this point, like. But yes, so I will introduce our guest, Dr. J. Barbuto from Cal State Fullerton's Center for Leadership. It's Giles O'Malley actually now, and we'll touch on that in a minute. Why? Some people may know it as Center for Leadership. Some more recently would know it as Giles O'Malley Center for Leadership. It's at Cal State Fullerton. It's, I believe, in the economics department or school.
It's
School
part of the
Economics.
College of Business and Economics.
And it used to be known by a different name, right? Prior.
Used to be just called the Center for Leadership.
Center for Leadership, right? And so Jay and I have known each other for a while, and
you were part of it at one point, no?
I'm still part of it. Yeah. It's really been a very rewarding experience to be part of it, and we'll touch on that as well. But I wanted Jay to be on today because we've had more and more interesting conversations, I think, on the board and when we get together, just in general. And if you think about it, just generally these days, the topic of leadership sometimes gets kind of, not consciously or intentionally, but gets sort of minimized. We talk about achievements and results and goals and setting those things. But leadership, and we're talking about like the basic foundations of leadership, which used to be, by the way, something that if you were on a certain path of mentorship or you were lucky enough to be exposed to certain good bosses that you worked for, that you developed some of these leadership skills sort of organically being on the path of your career. But that whole model is now changed because you may not have the fortune, or you may even have the misfortune of being under bad leadership. So you develop bad traits. It's almost like a child being raised, right? It's like there's these things that you pick up along the way. But now we also have the technology aspect and AI, which is eliminating jobs that are entry-level jobs, that are sort of stepping stone jobs, which would be points in your career path that you would get leadership skills development. And so how do we as a society, how do we as a business community identify not only the importance of leadership, but how it is even more important to be very methodical? Is the word? Methodical. Yeah, methodical to achieving that and imparting that to an upcoming generation. And so part of that reason is why I wanted to have Jay be on, because the center is rising in influence and importance, not only in terms of what it's doing and its place in the community in Orange County, but also in its potential to leave an imprint that is genuinely, seriously needed and could make a difference between, innovation continuing and having sort of that leadership lead the way, so to speak, not to be not to sound kind of repetitive, or we could find ourselves in a situation where we don't have that skill development. And so, without further ado, Jay, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Ron. It's really great to be on your show today and to be able to come here and talk a little bit about leadership, talk a little bit about the Giles O'Malley Center for Leadership, and really anything you want to talk about.
Well, and like I said, I've had the privilege and honor to actually be on Jay's podcast, or show that he does called Leadership Voice. But before we get to this, because a lot of people may know about Jay and what he's been doing here in Southern California in Fullerton through the center, but I want you to take a minute and actually give people some of your background, because you have a pretty impressive background and you've been at this for a very long time in terms of this focus.
Can I quickly add something? Because we talk about leadership, but this show is also about community. And I think leadership and community are to be working together. They have to be.
Can a leader lead alone, or does a leader need a community?
No.
Which question should he take first?
I don't know. Well, I'm fascinated to hear his take on
why
what
don't
is
we
leadership.
hold some of the questions to later? I really want Jay to basically share some of his background. I think it's pretty impressive.
So when I started my faculty career at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
Okay.
And I was there for about 14 years. And we developed a doctoral program in leadership studies while we were there.
Okay.
My position there as a professor of leadership, it started out as teaching and developing coursework and doing some research, but then also work in the community. 25% of my time was supposed to be as a specialist, a leadership development specialist. So I worked out in the field doing leadership training across the state for commodity boards, for agricultural boards, and lots of groups. And I found synergy in that work, so I was able to do research while also working with the government, while working with elected officials, while working with agricultural leaders across the state of Nebraska. So during the early parts of my career, we had a Master's of Science program in leadership development, which became twice the size of the MBA program. We created a doctoral program in leadership studies, which became the second largest doctoral program on campus.
Sometimes, in my world, in the design side, it's like you hear the word sustainability all the time, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I know sustainability, but I don't really know the components of it. Like, to me, sometimes leadership sounds like it's this catch-all. It's not really a very clear, and you're the academician on this, so I'm assuming that there's actually tenets and pillars for leadership. That and is it a common thing to find a school, for example, having that focus?
It's actually quite common. There are probably, if you look at most universities,
Yeah.
you'll find probably at almost every university, you'll find four different colleges that believe they are the home of leadership.
Okay, and what are those colleges usually?
You'll find that colleges of business
Yeah.
will believe they are the home of leadership. Most agricultural colleges
Okay.
will believe they are the home of leadership. Most colleges of education, especially those that have adult education,
Yeah.
believe they're the home of leadership. Most political science,
Right, because it's
programming, so arts and sciences
right.
will usually lay claim, and communications.
interesting. So it's again, I think, by virtue of what you just said, you see the importance of this role and the development of this role across the board, not just in the field of business, not in the field of politics or social services, but just across the board, even like you said, agriculture, even, right?
Disciplines.
I can see that.
It draws from anthropology, sociology. Those things all mesh together to give us what we know of as leadership. And so one of the things that you mentioned earlier that I thought was really, really impactful is this notion of where leadership comes from. But more importantly, how does leadership be sustainable? And I think the real answer to that is in the way leaders leave things.
Okay.
As a leader, we can come in and we can do things that we believe in. We can make things happen. We can create outcomes. But then when we move on to our next project or our next endeavor, what's left behind? Do we leave an abandoned warehouse? Do the products or the services or the things that we've developed, is it now defunct without the leader? If a leader builds something that requires them in perpetuity, then they have not created anything sustainable.
Well, and it begs the question, and maybe there is actually a defined difference that you could enlighten us with. What's the difference between a leader and a manager?
That's a great question. I actually hate that question, but it's a great question, and I'm gonna do.
Well,
my
I'm
best
saying
to
it for the
answer.
benefit of people
Strike that
listening.
question from the
No,
record.
No, I'm trying to. I'm saying that for the benefit of the people
Actually,
listening
I have
because
a similar question
because
as well.
what you're defining to me, where somebody basically, quote unquote, leads, was working on a project, they leave, and that project is not now sustainable. Did they lead or did they manage that project?
Yeah, usually when we think of leadership, we think of change, we think of innovation, we think of growth, we think of entrepreneurial, we think of things that are becoming. And once they've become, we think of managers to come in and tighten the ship and improve efficiency and things like that. I tend to not use the two terms.
Why do you hate that question?
Because I think there are different styles of leadership, some of which resemble what many people describe
management.
as management, and
That's a
some
very
that
good point.
describe more of a visionary, more of a servant leader, maybe more of a transformational leader. But there's also autocratic leaders who are just trying to
Very, very, very
keep their
top-down, control-driven. Yeah.
it's the way I want it to be. And then there's other styles of leadership that are very participative and others that are very
Collaborative.
not participative.
Yeah.
And there are some leaders out there that try to do everything themselves.
So is there a wrong or a right way to lead?
I think every leadership style that a person embraces for themselves, there is an effective version of it and there's an ineffective version of it.
Fair enough.
So I don't think that a person is only good if they have a certain style of leadership. But what ends up happening is whatever style you choose to have, you can be good at it and you can also be horrible at it. So you could be an autocratic leader and have good values, have good core principles, make good, impactful, benefiting many decisions, and you can succeed as an autocratic leader. But you can also be an autocratic leader and turn into a tyrant.
How do you choose what type of leader to be? Is it nature or nurture?
I love that question also. And I get asked this question a lot. I actually spent the first 14 years of my career researching the antecedents of leadership, meaning where does a person's leadership come from? And the nature versus nurture piece is a question I oftentimes get asked, especially with my area of expertise. When I get asked, are leaders made or are leaders born? I always have one answer. Do you feel suspense?
I am.
Okay.
I'm at the edge of my seat, literally.
Okay.
Waiting.
All right, here we go. What I tell people is that leaders are born,
Okay.
but not at birth.
Okay. Expand.
So leadership is born out of opportunity. Leadership is born out of necessity. Leadership is born out of the circumstances that we have in our lives. We cannot predict leadership at a very young age. So it's not born.
You can't go to a kindergarten class and say, "There's the leader."
That's the leader, the one that's bossing everyone
yeah,
around.
but
That's not the
I
leader.
think you lead when you start to find your way.
What happens is people might have the potential, but even their potential might not be even realized to themselves
Right.
until they're put into a situation where it's needed. And we all have these moments in our lives where we have to step forward and step up. It could be things personal in our lives, could be business related, but sometimes it's in those circumstances that our leadership emerges, that it takes over and it elevates, and we suddenly come to realize what we're fully capable of being as a leader.
But that being said, I think it's not on its own enough, right? Because you may develop into that, you may find yourself leading in a certain way, but then an added layer of sort of self-growth is to understand that just because you have touched on the edge rail of what may be your leadership style, now comes the piece where you need to get sophisticated with the tools, because everybody that you're leading is also different. That's the interesting thing for me with leadership, is that even though your style may be a certain style, depending on who your audience is and who you're basically working with, and it could be a team of 3 people, and each one of them has to be motivated and led in a different manner slightly. And that, to me, when I see that happening with people, is when I recognize not only leadership, but also the ability to lead given the circumstance.
Leadership is absolutely a process. There is no point at which you say, there, I've done.
I'm done.
I've done
here.
it.
I'm here. I've reaped.
I'm a
I've
great.
reaped.
I'm
there
now
it
a great
I
leader.
want to jump in.
Yeah,
Please
please.
You're wrong and right. Yeah, really.
Says the Frenchman.
He's not looking at me when he says that.
Because you
Hey, nice. Thanks, leaving me in on this end of the
you
phone.
do question and answer.
No,
at the
I
same
was going to
time.
actually ask you, because you are in a leadership role.
Yeah, when you're in the
every
kitchen,
time you're in the
you're in
kitchen,
a-
and you
you're-
have all these people.
Well,
So
I'm a pragmatic guy. All right. So leadership, I know what leadership is. Leadership for me is action. You have a reason, you have a goal, you have a purpose, and you have leadership with your soul as well. You put all that together to succeed. Okay, you can think you're a leader because you talk well. For me, it's not a leader. A leader is somebody who has a function in the world that draw people into the right place. And what do you think about that?
I think that what you're describing is that leadership is about results.
Yeah.
And a leader, in the way you look at leadership, there's an effectiveness component. That you're a leader because you're getting things done. You're a leader because you're making the good decisions. You're a leader because people are following. And so there's a difference between just how good you are at leading versus the type of leader you're trying to be. And what you're describing is effectiveness. That you're saying you're a leader if you're effective. And there's a lot of people that view it that way.
but then the question is, how do you measure effectiveness? Because effectiveness
The
may
result.
not be, but the result may be something that you don't even see until many years later. Like I could say that there are people who lead in the development of people,
like Chef has, where he's turned other people into chefs. He
No,
probably
no, I'm
didn't
talking
know
about
that till later. Yeah.
like teachers. Teachers are leaders.
Teachers
They are
leaders,
leaders.
yeah.
The impact of the
they-
teachers leading may not be something seen
For years.
in a quarterly
They-
report.
Well, they're leaders, but they are mentors.
But remember, the way you define leadership, the way you view leadership, will determine the way you view leadership
The
effectiveness.
results, yeah.
So if I view leadership as leadership is getting people to do what you want them to do, then I would then say anybody is a good leader if they got people to do what they wanted them
That's
to do.
scary.
But if I defined leadership as bringing people together towards a common good, now then you'd say, all right, so if they're a good leader, that means that they produced good outcomes that were good for lots of people. And it was-
Somebody still has to determine what the common good is, right?
absolutely.
I have a perfect
It's
example.
very interesting.
I've been involved, unfortunately, with the health industry for the last 6 years.
Which one? The health industry?
Health.
Health.
Health,
Okay.
yes.
Health. Right.
He's had some medical issues, and so
So-
he's being,
I have
sarcastic a
plenty
little
of
bit.
time, plenty of time in my hospital bed and my doctor chairs, whatever, to see how thing goes. I see the leader. I'm sorry, I'm going to shout her name of UCI Medical. I see the top guy. I met him because I want to always meet the top guy.
And you've liked your experience.
So you
at
must have been
UCI.
looking forward to this
Yes.
conversation
totally.
right now.
Right.
Yeah, since you're meeting the top guy.
No, it's very important that you connect, and that the leader doesn't mind to connect to you because come from the top down.
But how many people get to meet the head of UCI's whatever?
It
Yeah, but
doesn't, it doesn't matter to me.
See,
I
what's
just-
interesting is, and this is exactly why. No, this is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Because it's not something you can just very easily put on a notepad and call it a day.
Yeah.
This is the multifaceted nature of leadership. And if I had to guess, to me, the curiosity of all these multiple dimensions to it is probably part of the interest in the topic that you have, right? Like it's like, to your point, it's not something that it's one and done, or you've reached it. It's constantly evolving, changing. The people that you're dealing with are variables. There's all these elements that are coming in. So if somebody who's very finite and very like one-dimensional or two-dimensional, that will also reflect in their leadership.
Absolutely, and,
Totally.
and there's self-interest in it as well.
Right.
When we evaluate people, when we evaluate other people's leadership, we oftentimes will think about how we're affected by what they're doing.
Right.
So we might not always prioritize the effect they're having on the greater, but we might
How did it
rather
affect
prioritize.
me? How did it
Exactly.
affect me?
Like,
And if you really want an example of that, that's how many people vote.
Yes. Right. How it affects me.
Because I'm
My
going to look at
pocket.
Yeah,
that later, and how is it going to affect me versus a bigger picture. Now again, there's other layers to this. Do I have enough latitude and flexibility and self of comfort and a safety net that I can think bigger, or am I needing to focus on those tabletop issues? You know,
But politics is in the cloud. For politics,
Not really.
you
I think-
don't,
I
you
think-
don't
I
touch
think
it. You
All
don't.
politics is local.
but
That's
it's
what
led.
Tip O'Neill
But
said.
all of
Yeah.
that stuff is led.
Yeah.
And leadership, and this is why I'm having this conversation, because what I want to turn this to is, as varied and multidimensional as this conversation, as this topic is, and the subject matter at hand, and as changing as it is, dynamics and times and technology and all these impacting on it, this is really the real reason
yeah.
why to have a center that is focused on the development on this in real time, not just in an academic, archaic, archival,
Yeah.
this is what we did, now learn what those tenets are.
especially
the
in-
living,
yeah.
breathing center of engagement with this is so important.
Especially now that we talk a lot about AI, okay? But it's going to be a trend. I'm going to have to live with it. But you have great leaders. Go back to UCI. We have one guy. He's not an AI. He's a brain. He's a soul, and he has a fantastic medical center on Chapman in Orange, and then just create a new one right there in Irvine, and the staff, the whole feeling, the whole work there is exactly the same. So everybody follow the lead. That's for
But is
me,
it the
result
leader
of
or is it the system or both? Because if
He-
that leader leaves, does that system then still
Right.
hold or not?
Well, hopefully he has good people around
Well,
him.
that's part of the leadership.
Yes.
So Jay, I want to turn the conversation, just bring it more towards the center. Talk about what was the intention of the center. What was the motivation behind doing this? Because you were in Nebraska, and
That's
you
right.
ended up in Fullerton.
I was
So how did that happen?
I was in Nebraska. I was overseeing a doctoral program in leadership studies, working with doctoral students, preparing them to become faculty, professors of leadership all over the world. But I became a professor at a relatively young age, so I had 14 years of professor experience at a relatively young age. I was already fully promoted. I was already tenured. So I started thinking second chapter, the next chapter for a person in my area and my expertise would be something related to leadership. And the thought of being a director of a center for leadership was really enticing.
Leading a center for
Leading.
leadership.
There you go. Leading the leaders.
And at Cal State Fullerton, they didn't want someone to just lead a center for leadership. They wanted us to create a center for leadership. So when I
Yeah,
came,
you didn't step into something.
And
There
why?
was
Why did
nothing, right?
Why
There
did
was-
they want you to create that center? What did they see? Why did they see that was an important asset they needed to have in their campus?
the Cal State Fullerton I don't know if you used to see this, the bumper stickers that they had. They had a slogan called "Ready to Work, Ready to Lead," and that used to be the slogan at Cal State Fullerton. And a lot of the donors and folks in the community said, "We get the ready to work part. 80% of your students are working full or part time while they're in school, but where's the ready to lead? Like, where's your evidence that your graduates are going to be ready to lead?"
Yeah.
And what came from that is some of the donors sort of put forward a little bit of a seed money to start a center for leadership. So they did a national search to find folks that could take on and lead and develop and create a center for leadership. I was fortunate to be selected. We connected. I came out here, and first week on campus, I said to the dean, "Dean, I have a lot of ambition. I've got a lot of goals. I've got a lot of things I want to create here at the center."
How long ago was that?
This is 14 years ago. I said, "I need to know now, though, is there things you need me to be aware of, or things you want me to constraints, because I am very much a go-getter and I don't always take no for an answer."
Anybody who knows you would say that, yeah.
And the dean said to me, he said, "Jay, I want you to proceed and try to realize your vision as if you had no limitations." And I said,
Wow, that's unusual.
"It is."
That's an unusual leadership style. Usually.
And let's give a shout out to who that was.
That was Anil Puri, who was dean at the time. And I said to the dean, "Dean Puri, okay, but you understand that what you've just said
Be careful what you ask for.
is that now you'll be calling me into your office periodically to
I didn't know you were going to do that.
to reel me in or to slow me down,
Put you back on track.
because I would say none of the innovations of the center, none of the progress of the center, the impact that we've made in the community and on campus and in the external community, none of it has been a smooth awakening.
Right.
Each time we've moved into new space or moved into new grounds to do a new program, it's been met with resistance at every stage and in every walk. And one of the things that we have had to embrace is that you can't just hear no and just say, "Oh, okay, never mind then." You have to then follow that no with a why, or what are your concerns, or what are your hesitations. If you treat no as failure, or if you treat no as the end of the conversation instead of just an interruption,
Yeah.
I think that is a big step in the process. So developing a center for leadership, making it into a highly programmatic, with lots of things on campus for students and staff, but also lots of great things for the business community, and then leveraging the relationships that are involved in both entities to create synergy. That only happens when you don't take no.
Can we go
for an answer.
backward a little bit right at the beginning? You
We
said-
do that a lot in this show.
That's fine, but it's
No.
all a new beginning for me because my memory lasts about 10 minutes.
It's okay.
So it'll be like we'll talk about something new now.
Brand
It's
new.
all fine.
And if you
No,
believe him
you say
saying that, you're in trouble.
We are born as leader.
You think leaders are born?
That's what you said.
Leaders, right?
He says there's a moment when they are born, but it's not at birth.
Yeah, and so it's
Doesn't
a
have-
play on words. It's a play on words,
Right.
Because what
You
it
don't come
really
out of the
means,
womb as a
what it
leader.
really means is that leaders are made, but they're made and they're born.
Out of circumstance,
Yeah.
born
Okay.
out of an
So
incident.
do that
A
mean
need and
Yeah.
they have to walk to that time, at that period? So, because for me, leadership needs to have, a leader needs to have experience. You cannot be a great leader if you don't have an experience in your field.
Yep. Aristotle would
Have-
agree with
No.
you.
Yeah,
Aristotle.
yes, yes.
Aristotle says that. Aristotle says that leaders must be followers first. That Aristotle says that. Plato does not. Plato says there is the worthy chosen few who were always destined to be leaders. That's Plato's view. Aristotle says you must be ready
believe in that.
to follow before you should be leading.
Yes.
Can I give you an interesting example that we had not on this show, but another show a couple years ago? The author David Marquette, captain in the Navy, who wrote a book pretty popular, Turn the Ship Around, and he tells the story, as I recall, of being assigned to a submarine, and he was trained in a very autocratic style. Shut up, just don't ask, do this, do it now, and it didn't work. And he said, my biggest problem was I couldn't fire these people. We're on a submarine. I can't let them off and say, get out of here then, if you're not going to follow me. So his whole thesis is, the subtitle of his book is True Story, Turning Followers into Leaders. He really believed that you had to bring people along. I couldn't just tell them what to do.
Well, part of experience sometimes is also exposure to what not only doesn't work or doesn't work for you, but that you also realize that if you were put in that position, you would do it in a different way. I think that's sort of that experience and seasoning that we're talking about. But it could happen at any age. I mean, there are people that go to 60, 70, 80, and they still haven't had that, and people that face it at the age of 10. Like, you can't really put a number on that.
Right. One day you're thrust into that role, and that's when you're born.
The crucible of experience, so to speak.
If the leader's being autocratic and they're telling people do this, do this, do this, what they're not doing is they're not intellectually stimulating the people around them. And as a result, people do not become good at solving problems. They do not become a learning organization.
Right.
They're not good without the leader.
And we don't listen to them.
Yet not to sound sort of contrarian, but there are people that don't want to have that happen. They want to just follow. Like, you have to understand your audience. You have to be able to do that. Like,
That's a good thing.
well, right. I mean, and I remember having this conversation one time when
You have
it
people
was-
who will never be leaders.
It was right out of COVID, and I think you and I, Jay, may have had this conversation too. Right after COVID, the only two topics that people want to talk about: how to attract talent and how to retain it.
Yeah,
Remember,
right.
this is like everybody wants to talk about. Wherever you went, wherever you had a chance to talk or present, that's what they wanted to know: how to attract talent, how to retain it.
You have to shine.
And I remember an article. It was
If you
the
don't
front-
shine, you don't attract.
but how do you shine? Because people shine differently. There was an article that was the front cover also of the Harvard Business Review, and it was about the myth of busyness, and it was a beehive, and it was basically about being busy and being busy, right? There are people that live by every minute on their calendar, right? And I remember having this conversation that was
It's
driven.
a society.
Right, but
The illusion of activity.
but listen to this. My point was this: if you have a team of 10 people, and you have no time on your calendar to get to know your team, then how do you lead that team? You have to have the ability to know every individual on that. If you don't, then you're making them fit the mold. Because I was sitting on panels, and all I was hearing on these panels was corporate culture. They fit the corporate culture. They wear the blue uniform. And I'm like,
They swallow the blue pill.
but you haven't realized that we had a paradigm shift in the labor force, and that you now have to have a little bit more inclination to finding what people are motivated by, both on the personal growth, business growth. Like, people are motivated different. Some people is like, I'm going to come in at 8. I'll leave at 5:30. I put in a half an hour past 5, and I've come in an hour earlier or whatever, and I'm going to take that paycheck, and you're not reaching me on the weekends, and I am totally fine with that. And there are some people that will go, I'm going to work all day long, and I'm not expecting you to pay me more, and I got things. So everybody's motivated different. And I think what makes for a good leader from my perspective is a person who has the nuanced ability to actually get to know their team so they best get the best performance of their team, not only in terms of goals, but also in terms of personal growth. Because that's smart business. If you have that team growing in their ability.
I think you're right. A good leader is somebody who recognizes who put that leader.
So I got a question for Dr.
But that leader
Barbuto.
doesn't have a place for everywhere. Like there may be a time for
what
leaders.
I'm hearing from everybody is the experience I have, that we all seem to think there is one style of leadership that works best. Is there one style of leadership that works best, or are there multiple styles? And give us some examples.
I think generally people are looking for leaders that will help them to reach their full potential. Right now, when people leave jobs, it used to be people didn't leave jobs, they left leaders. Now, what people are doing is they're leaving because they don't believe that their future is where they are. Yeah. And so leaders' job now in the retention of talent is in the development of talent. If I, as a leader, am not developing the talent around me, then the talent around me will leave.
Is that the Jack Welch School of GE that was always building people from within and supposedly and all that?
I probably wouldn't.
You wouldn't pick that example.
I probably wouldn't. That wouldn't be the.
But that was his press release. That was his.
But you see, Paul, what you're doing here too is you're referencing sort of tenets of academia on reference points like Jack Welch. What I'm saying to you is today, even as early as COVID, the paradigm has changed. What Jay just shared about the fact that people leave because they don't see that is where the future is. Well, the reality is also that your labor force is smaller. So as a leader, you now have additional realities to deal with in terms of retention, right? So it's part of it is goodwill and intentions. Part of it is smart business today that wasn't necessarily maybe a factor back then.
So do you think there is a good style of leadership that everybody should follow, or are there multiple paths to leadership?
I think that if an organization, if a leader wants to attract talent and keep talent, then they're going to have to develop a leadership style that fosters the development of talent and fosters the career growth of the talent around them, which tends to lean towards a servant leadership style of leadership, where with a servant leader, the goal of the leader is to develop the talent to fully optimize the talent of the people around them. Make that the priority.
To serve the team, not just have the team serve him. Right?
Yeah. The benefit of that is that a servant-led organization, a leader that practices servant leadership, becomes a preferred workplace for employees. They will gravitate. I will go and work for you because you have servant leadership tendencies, and I will leave this other company that doesn't have servant leadership tendencies because it's not a preferred workplace. And so when we talk about the war on talent, we're talking about preferred workplaces. We're talking about preferred leaders, preferred supervisors, preferred cultures. We're talking about career advancement and career development. So if we take an employee and we say they're like independent contractors, they're trying to decide what will be the best investment of these next 2 or 3 or 4 years.
Right.
They want a job today that can be growing soon. More, and they think they want the result and grow in their
I think otherwise they're taking the job because it's like a filler job. They don't really have a lot of interest in other than just to basically do it. I mean, we could talk about this aspect of this for the rest of the show, but I want to turn back.
I just have to say one more thing.
Go ahead, Jay.
There's an odyssey here because employers want to hire employees that will stay, that will come and stay and grow with the company. Employees also want the very same thing. The problem is that leaders are not doing what's necessary. They're not developing the talent. They're not investing in their people to the extent that they need to. Both parties say they want the same thing, but the leaders need to stop wishing for it. And they need to start wanting it, and they need to start
And putting
taking the
things in
steps.
place to do it.
Exactly.
Right, because you know what? Thank you for bringing that up, because that's absolutely correct. You want it, but then you basically penalize the team for not having it, but you haven't really put any conscious effort or programming to develop
there.
it. And what you end up with is you lose people, and now you're basically looking everywhere other than where really the reason is. And no, so what is the center doing, Jay? Because I mentioned in the beginning, the center, just with my knowing you, knowing being involved with the board of directors, the center has gained not only notoriety, but it's also gained prominence and effectiveness. So what are some of the things that the center does to try to cultivate some of this?
We help businesses become better workplaces. And we do that by providing training programs. For some organizations, we are their training department. We can go in, we've got about 72 different leadership training topics that can be delivered. They're ready, they're off the shelf, ready to go.
Yeah.
Companies, large companies, some of the most prominent companies in Orange County, they rely on the center to supplement what they're already doing. Smaller organizations with less established learning and development functions, we are their training department. So that's one of the things that we do is we provide.
So you're a resource for those companies to actually step
Absolutely.
up and do that.
We also have a climate survey that organizations can use. We're probably one of the only university-based climate surveys that companies can use, buy and use in their organizations. And it's used with some of the top measures in the field to capture the most relevant items. And every year we survey the Orange County community to ask, what are the things you wish you knew about your employees? What do you wish you knew about your company? And we always revise that survey every year to make sure that it's always current, always relevant, and always measures the needs so that we can answer the questions that organizations are always asking. What that information will reveal are needs. And whatever those needs are, the center usually has the solutions.
And I'm not trying to sell those programs, although I will encourage everybody to find out more about them. And why don't we give them actually the website, Jay? Where can they find out more information?
So usually the best way to find us is Center for Leadership, Cal State Fullerton.
Right. So not only is that a resource available for employees or employers to actually bring in and help with the development of this internal talent development, but also you're not limited to just a certain size of company, right? I mean, you've actually provided this assistance and aid to larger firms, like you said, that may be a supplement to what they have already existing, that maybe is like maybe a more current infill or something. But you've also provided for smaller companies, right?
Yeah,
in multiple sectors of business.
I've done corporate executive training in CEOs' living rooms. I've done executive training in courtrooms. We've done training in auditoriums, and we've done them in arenas. Really, it's every different structure, conference room to boardroom to training room to jury box. I mean, we've done leadership training where the participants were sitting in the jury boxes.
And you have then through that developed also relationships and other ways of being more and more engaged in the community and more ingrained in the Orange County community. You have actually had the ability to invite people over to be on your show, which is produced on campus. That is the Leadership Voice.
That's right. It's called the Leadership Voice. We're in our 9th season of airing. And the Leadership Voice is Orange County's only television program that's devoted entirely to conversations around leadership. And so every episode has a theme, and every theme relates to leadership across different disciplines, different industries, different challenges.
And where do they see that? Like YouTube, I'm assuming, other places?
Yeah, we air on Cal State Fullerton's television network. And so if you were to turn on the TV right now and turn on the Cal State Fullerton network, there's probably a 30% chance that we would actually be on right now.
But if they don't get that, they could see it on YouTube, I assume.
Exactly. Yeah. It's streamed on YouTube. The center's website also has a direct link to the videos.
And what's the website again?
it's the Center for Leadership at Cal State.
Just
Fullerton.
do a search on Google, Center for
Okay.
Leadership at Cal State Fullerton. You'll find it. It might be under Giles O'Malley as well. But look at it. There's a link to those shows. I have been a guest on Jay's show a couple of times with different focuses. I think we did. But there's always, very prominent business leaders and people that are innovatively engaged in sort of this role of leadership by example. I think Jay provides that for people. So there's like a whole 9th season.
Yeah.
And, so there's a
And
whole
who
good
was
amount
Giles?
of contact.
Who is or was Giles O'Malley?
So Giles, Terry Giles, is the naming donor. He and his
For
wife
the new building.
for the naming donor for the
For
center.
the center, yeah.
And then one of the major donors to help us grow and build the Center for Leadership.
Which is very exciting. It's a very exciting building that's happening on campus. That's a brand new building, and the groundbreaking took place. God, has it been last spring?
Exactly. Yeah,
a year.
we did a study about 65 centers for leadership in the country. There's about 65
Wow.
center for leadership, university-based.
Yep.
And what we did is we called each one of the centers, everyone in the country, and we asked them what they do. What do they do? What are their programs? What are their initiatives? And we kept track. We keep track of what every center in the country does. And then we developed a big chart, a big study, which shows what every center does and doesn't do. And it kind of gives us an idea of the breadth of programming. And the Center for Leadership here at Cal State Fullerton compares very well on a
And I'll share that.
national
It's a
scale.
very interesting chart to study. That, to Jay's point, actually shows the depth of programming that the center offers
Yeah.
locally.
I would like to go back to your professional, your professor work at the college. Do you see now that more and more of your students want to jump from a lower income job to executive job too fast?
I think all people want to advance in their careers, and how realistic people are in how quickly that should happen. That's I think there are a lot of folks that expect promotions quicker than maybe the opportunities
Yes.
will actually
Let's
happen.
piggyback off that and talk about the impact of AI as you see it in terms of leadership development, or even like to Pascal's point.
And will AI be the leader? Will the
Well,
robot
because
be the leader?
AI gives them too much over too fast. I'm
Well,
sure.
part of that, I think everybody that's starting, whether your job, the lack of reality in what the path looks like, sometimes leads to that evaluation. Oh, I'm going to get there faster. I think that's as
And
universal.
isn't
as
that the
any-
common
anything.
complaint of the millennials, that they want to
But
move too quick?
you probably had the same complaints, Paul. I know
Yeah.
I had the same complaints. I don't think it's anything to do with a particular generation. I think it's just a part of growth and experience. But
The future of leadership development is related to what you're saying with
Yeah.
AI. I want to weigh right in on that.
yeah.
So the Center for Leadership, we developed a leadership app, and it's AI generated, and it's an app that will help leaders become better leaders. It'll help them engage better with the people around them. It will give them reminders throughout the day of their goals that they've said that they wanted to achieve. It'll remind them to talk to certain people. Have you followed up on this? Have you celebrated the successes? Have you gone back and thanked the people that helped you make it happen? And what we're finding already in this app, and those that use it, they're immediately seeing an improvement in productivity. They're seeing an improvement in goal achievement. And perhaps most importantly, we're seeing an improvement in the morale of their employees and in the mental health of their employees.
Which is huge. I mean, that's something that the center I know is also focused on, that mental health component in the work environment, especially coming out of COVID, that became more and more a critical element in the business environment.
I'm sorry, I want to make a bad point, but the present politics is not helping.
Well, we're
your
not
mental-
talking. We're not talking.
Trying to
about
stay out of
No,
politics.
That's why I don't.
No,
Well, guess
trying
what?
to stay
Guess
away
what?
from politics
You
here.
get to choose what you input and what you
yeah,
absorb.
well-
You choose what you eat, right, Chef?
Let me shift it another way.
Yeah.
When I was a little boy, a corporate leader was an authoritarian figure. You do what I say when I say it.
Yeah.
and the good employee was one who could follow and say yes sir, a military, what we perceived as a military style, yes sir, no excuse sir. That changed as I grew up into more of this collaborative servant leadership, listening to people, and I wonder if the pendulum is swinging back to more of an authoritative style in corporations and life in general.
So this is where I wanted to take this following conversation. With AI, with everybody, to your point, Jay, basically being more productive, it basically has elevated and kind of maybe leveled a little bit, provided assistance and tools for people to access easily and be able to deliver on stuff, right? What then differentiates people? If we're leveling the playing field, sort of, right? We're providing these tools because I know
we all got
that
the
if
same knowledge.
If all four of us in this room have access to AI, Chat GPT, whatever, all of a sudden we're writing a lot better. Maybe we're being more concise. I can ask it to be very efficient versus wordy.
We're suddenly
I can tell
smarter.
I can tell it to do a synopsis versus a story. Like I can be very much driven that way. And again, knowing your audience, that may resonate better coming from me now versus maybe how I wrote before the benefit of that tool, right? So if everybody's doing this, and this maybe is a question that's sort of open-ended, we'll find out over time. If everybody's doing this, then what is the measure of differentiation? Because we also have another thing going on. It's more severe competitiveness. There's more intensity, whether it's company to company or talent to talent. The war on talent you were just mentioning was not only just, in my opinion, wasn't just a war on talent, internal or external, but also between people that are competing, right? So when everybody is now armed with more tools, how do we now differentiate value in leadership?
All leaders have the same tools, huh? We're all good.
Well,
You all have the same tools.
I think you're operating under an assumption, and that assumption is that if we all have access, if we all have Google and we all have AI and we all have ChatGPT, does that mean that we're all going to be equal? And the answer is absolutely not, because what's going to stand out, what's going to matter, is when you do have that personal connection with people, the value in your ability to bring out the best in them, in person, face to face, will start to be what separates us from others. Rod, when you decided to support the Center for Leadership 4 or 5 years ago, was it by text messaging?
No. and you
Where were we when we decided?
Yeah, we were on a golf course. Well, but the point is, and you led right into it, Jay. Thank you, because that's exactly what I was going to say. Sometimes we get so dazzled by the gadgets and the gimmickry and the tools, and we forget that that's what they are. They are tools. Those skill sets, those soft skills, those nuanced development skills that are not necessarily from an app, those things are critical. And that's when, like, whether it's nature or nurture or exposure or mentorship and all of these things that maybe you cannot put a full $sign value on, that are the real priceless pieces that make a difference between a person that leads and a person that doesn't. And it's very interesting in that as we have more tools, as we have more things, more accessibility to stuff, look at the internet, look at the world of being in contact but not really truly connected.
They become the substitutes for leadership, but they won't replace it.
No, you still have your brain and your soul on your.
I think that is a great point to stop at, which is that they are substitutes.
Yeah.
But so here's the cautionary.
It's like a supplement.
It compensates.
So it's a compensation.
It's a health supplement.
In fact, Chef,
you could be a bad leader, but at least you have these things.
Culinary and restaurant
create
business
a higher
is a
floor.
perfect field to apply this. You can walk into a restaurant. You seem to walk into more restaurants and more restaurants. People walk into more and more restaurants, and it's nice and it's clean and it seems expensive and all of this stuff. And then you sit down and you have a less than, like, it's an acceptable meal. but it's not an
enjoyable,
experience that
no.
you remember or that really has an impact.
It's a production line.
And then there's times when you walk into a place that doesn't have all of that, or it has all of that, but there's a little something else.
So-
I think
Yeah.
your point,
Inspiration,
Jay, is a
creativity.
great thing. Those are tools and substitutes, but it will never substitute.
I think great
Leadership.
leaders need
Yeah,
to have
it
great
can substitute for some of the things, but it will never replace the dynamics of leaders. It'll never replace the true value add that an individual can bring to any conversation, to any leadership, to the boardroom. Ultimately, the leaders that, would you say, have it, that
that soul
that
that communicates.
ability to
Just-
motivate, that ability to
it's
inspire,
an epidemic.
to make people want to follow. The leaders that have that and also can leverage the technologies that are in place,
Yeah, there's you
those
can't,
are the
you
ones.
need a
you,
balance.
you can't ignore the fact that that's part of our life.
Yes.
But I guess I'm trying to encourage people that like, the sky is not necessarily falling. This is just another tool in the toolkit. The same principal elements that applied and stood true the test of time still apply, if not even more opportunity to highlight and showcase yourself and differentiate yourself. So don't just buy into the gadgets and the gimmicks and forget that those other things are even more critically important today than even they were before, and that you should develop those. And if you want to find out more examples of people that are being recognized for that kind of stuff, you should come to the next awards, which is when's the next leadership
May
awards?
2nd, the Center for Leadership will be hosting the 14th Annual Leadership Awards. Every year we recognize excellence in executive leadership across 5 categories of leadership: growth, innovation, culture change, strategy, and community engagement, as well as company awards for excellence in leadership development for companies that are doing a great job of developing human capital, and also the Organizational Excellence Award for community engagement, which recognizes companies that are doing a great job of activating company-wide at giving back and become a part of the community that we serve. We also have a Lifetime Achievement recognition this year that people will definitely want to come and check out.
And where is it taking place this year?
It's going to be at the Hyatt Regency in Irvine, and it'll be May 2nd this year. It'll run from about 11 o'clock until about 1:30.
Yeah.
And you want to become a part of it, get some tables. We're expecting over 500 people.
Yeah,
at the
it
event.
usually sells out. The tables go fast. It's a great opportunity for you to bring some people from your company, or colleagues, or fellow business owners, and check it out. It gives you a good idea about what the center's impact is. It also gives you an opportunity to engage with some of the students that are involved in our scholar programs, and it really is something you should be aware of if you're in Orange County, or I would even say Southern California area for sure.
Thank you, Red.
As a place that's only getting more and more important, and once that building gets constructed, there'll even be more amenities and assets that will come to bear to provide this mission with more legs, if you will. And find out about Jay. Check out the Leadership Voice on YouTube. Go to the website. It's been a great experience for me to be involved with them, and they are very involved also with a lot of people that are like first in their families, first generation, first people to go to college, so they're starting them up on the right footing. And then when they're releasing them out there, they're actually having tools not only to be competitive, but to also foster other people toward leadership. And so thank you for being here, my friend.
I
It's
can't
really,
wait to have more conversation with you.
Yeah, I mean, and it impacts every industry. So he's like, oh, we're not a banking industry. Doesn't matter. Food and beverage, definitely. Every single place that has a human component, labor force, it impacts caregiving, all of that stuff. There's all these spaces that really, in the course of being efficient and productive and meeting deadlines and all this stuff, sometimes we forget about the importance of the role of leadership in that as well.
Absolutely. It's been a real pleasure to be here and to talk a little bit more about leadership, and I've really enjoyed it. And for everybody listening out there, just remember that leadership is a process. It's not an outcome. It never ends. The process of leadership never ends. The day you think you have it figured out is the day
It throws
of
you
your
a-
decline.
Right, right. So always stay curious, and to that point too, it's not something that only is the purview of a few. That's where things like the center exist, is because you too could actually find your own leadership voice and your own leadership style, and then have the ability to be mentored and guided, not to be shaped in somebody else's image, but to actually find your own place in leadership.
Absolutely. Come check out the Center for Leadership. We can help you in your leadership journey, whether you're a student or whether you're early career, or even if you're a high-level executive or a company owner. The center probably has something that can benefit you.
Yeah.
It can benefit your development, can benefit your organization. I'm pretty sure that the center has something for everyone.
There's a board of directors, there's a board of advisors, so there's plenty of possibilities for you to engage and be involved, regardless where you are in your career path.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jay, for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.